Time now for the Historic Racing News Podcast. Here is your host, Paul Tarsey.
Greetings, and welcome to the December edition of the show. As this is the final show of 2025, we thought we would take a look backwards and a look forwards at the last 12 months and the next 12 months on the historic racing news front. As usual, I'm joined by the gruesome twosome. So let me start with Jim Roller. Jim, I know it's a few weeks away, but are you ready for the Christmas holidays?
I am, believe it or not. Oh yeah, short of one package from the wool company in Ireland that's stuck in tariff hell. I'm ready to go. Yeah.
And the other member of the team, obviously, is Paul Jurd. Now, before I let you in, Paul, I want to congratulate you on an award that you received from the guys and girls at Porsche Club. The Steve Kevlin Award is entitled The Spirit of the Paddock, and for that to be made to a non-competitor is high praise indeed. So, congratulations, my old buddy. That's,
golf clap.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think possibly it was just a look. You've done 20 years off your pop type award, but there you go.
Well, no, it's not. It is definitely not, and it is well deserved. Geez, what a summer he's had, huh? Paul Tarsey interviewing all those important people. He's in fuego.
It's been quite a year, to be quite honest. I need to sum it up myself at some point. I've spent more days at motorsport events than any other year I ever had, even when I was doing it full time.
How many?
I'm on, I think, 36 days.
36 days this year.
Yeah, at motorsport related events. Yeah.
You got. I did 45 weekends one year.
That's pretty good going, isn't it?
Yeah, that's weekends, so that's probably close to 90 days.
Oh yeah, because probably really closer to 130 because it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday, most of them. Back in those days.
Probably the highest point of my month was attending the Royal Automobile Club Book Awards, Motoring Book Awards. Not all the books were about motorsport. There's all sorts of different categories, but the ones that cover racing cars and drivers are very closely thought. And it was great because you can catch up with all sorts of people who've written some great books this year. I mean, this year's been a cracking time for books, and I saw Damien Smith and Paul Kenny and John Saltonstall, Richard Jenkins, James Newbold, all of whom have been on the show over the years.
Name dropper.
Friend of the stars.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've said to all of them I want them to come back and talk to us again in the coming months. Damien Smith is just about to launch a new website all about sailing, nothing to do with cars at all. So,
I didn't know Damien was into sailing. I've known him since the 90s. Oh, he's not. Okay, fair. Moving on.
Yeah, but he's doing that. And I also caught up with Neil Smith, who wrote On the Prowl, which we looked at, which is that brilliant TWR Jaguar book. So here we are at the Royal Automobile Club Motoring Book of the Year Awards, and first of all, I'm with Neil Smith, who has just been nominated for his debut book, On the Prowl. And Neil, you were kind enough to come on the show a while ago and talk about the book. Great to have you face to face for the first time. How's the book going?
As far as I know, I think things are going really well. I mean, it was great to be on your show earlier in the year and spend some time with the Radio Le Mans folks as well at the race, and that certainly helped. But I think people are hearing about it and it's getting out there, and it's just nice to, as a debut author, just to see people excited about the work.
You say a debut author, and I mean, you haven't gone in quietly, have you, with such a huge book? It's you've really jumped in from a very big height. Did you not think about going for something a bit less expansive?
Well, I mean, when I was doing this, I had no vision as to whether this would ever even be a real thing. But yet here we are, and it's done. And I'm at the Royal Automobile Club, and I think it just shows that the one thing I've learned from this is you should just grab life by the horns and just go for it. And here we are.
Now you've been involved, as we heard a couple of months ago, with Yanks at Le Mans,
yes.
which is a continuation of a grand tome. You've really got the bug now, haven't you?
It's such a wonderful community, the automotive writing, and especially the motorsport writing community, and I've been lucky to be connected with just some really great people. And we talked with John Nikas and Jody Ellis about Yanks on the show recently, and those two folks have been just absolutely pivotal in kind of introducing me to this whole world. And I'm here this evening and talking to people like John Brooks, who did the new Le Mans Decades book, and Ian Wagstaff, and so many great authors. And everyone's just so humble and down to earth and welcoming, and you can't help but be inspired when you're around those kinds of people to just, I guess, keep at it.
Yeah, well, please do, because I know that you mentioned to us on the show the next book is going to be all about Bob Julius, and I can't wait for that one.
Yeah, I mean, this is such a great work that John Nikas has been putting together, and I was delighted to be asked to participate in it. It's coming along really nicely. The design work is beginning. Again, Jody is involved in that. Even on the flight over here from the US, I was working on captions for the section of the Trans Am racing he did with the XJS in 1976 through 1978. So we're just plugging away, getting those last few bits done. And when it's done, it's going to be phenomenal, because Bob, just the place that he holds in US sports car racing history is incredible. And for him to ask John to help him put together that story it's just so great to be a part of that.
I suppose really the Julius story is the history of sports car racing in the US.
It's the history of professional racing in general, I think. I mean, he was a blueprint for going racing in a way where you bring in sponsors, and at the same time you are leveraging the work that you're doing to promote brands and potentially make money from running cars for other people. He was a visionary, and I think we've tried to capture that as much as possible. I know that there's certainly sections of the book where I've been writing about how he was absolutely insistent on how all of his team members kept their clothes completely clean, which is amazing considering that the main color of his team was white. And there they were working in the pits, and back in the 70s and 80s, pit lanes and paddocks were nowhere near as spick and span as they are these days.
That's a really good point, actually, because you look back at the 60s and 70s, and mechanics were in filthy overalls, even to the point that those photographs of Ron Dennis, when he was as a mechanic, would be in filthy overalls. I mean, that's a bit of a contradiction in terms.
It certainly is, yeah. I mean, and I think there were people who that just wasn't acceptable to them, and Ron is one of those people. Bob is another. While I was on the flight this morning, I was watching the documentary that Manish Pandya did on Bernie Ecclestone, and he was another one of those. When he purchased Brabham, the first thing he did, he looked around the workshop. He's like, this place is a disgrace. We need to clean it up. We need to organize everything. We need to get everything tidied up nicely, and we'll just be more effective and more professional as a result of it. So I think Bob just did it a bit before a lot of these other guys did it.
Yeah, I mean, we always think of Formula One as being the harbinger of all of that, but no, I think you're right about Bob. So obviously the Julius book, that's in the pipeline and coming on well. So where do we go from there? Come on, spill the beans, Neil.
Oh gosh, I have some ideas. I think there's maybe a few stories that are maybe a bit more modern that are yet to be written. I like the idea of looking at stories that haven't been focused on quite as much, in the mainstream media. So I'm thinking a little bit about, sports car racing in the 2000s, 2010s. There's some stuff in there that might be kind of interesting. And beyond that, I don't know, maybe something outside of motorsport.
Who knows? We'll wait with bated breath, but many congratulations on your success at being nominated for tonight. And we're looking forward to Yanks at Le Mans. We're looking forward to the Tullius book, and keep in touch.
Will do. Thank you, Paul.
You're listening to the Historic Racing News Podcast.
Joining us now on Historic Racing News is legendary writer, reporter, and now award-winning author, Pete Lyons. Pete, thanks for coming back and joining us again here on Historic Racing News. Congratulations. You were a recent winner of a very prestigious RAC Book Award. Congratulations. How does it feel?
Thank you. It's the Royal Automobile Club Award for one of their best books of the year. It's an important award. So thank you very much.
How's the book doing? And obviously somebody liked it because it's an award winner. But how's it doing? Are you pleased with the way it's going currently?
I'm extremely pleased. It's going better than I dared hope. I had no idea how it would be received, and it's been received more than I dared hope for. So it's been great. We here at the house we sell them off of PeteLyons.com, and we've sold well over 200 here. So I might be one of their best dealers. I don't know, but they've got other people around the country and in Europe. And I understand in Britain it's sold out, and there's a few left in the U.S., but I was just told recently that they think they're probably going to do a reprint, a second printing, which is always good.
Wow, that's for a motorsports book. That's a good big thumbs up. That's outstanding. Now, and part of the reason we wanted to do this interview with you is one of the things we're doing in this episode of Historic Racing News is talking about what is a perfect gift for the motorhead in your life. And I couldn't think of anything better than your Tales of Racer Road, which, there you go, hold it up. You're nothing if not a good marketer, I can tell you that much. My Travels on Racer Road with Pete Lyons. And Pete, when we talked in July, we talked about the process of doing the book. What has it been like you're a fairly introverted guy, so what's it been like to do these book interviews and that sort of stuff so far to promote the book?
It's been more congenial and less stressful than I ever expected because everybody I've talked to, including your good self, is an enthusiast. And you and I know each other, and it's turned out to be I've met a lot of friends around the world, and it's just like a fireside chat. It's good fun. If I'd had to go to London and stand up on a stage in front of all those important people in tuxedos, I don't know that I could have handled that.
Yeah, neither of us are the tuxedo type, are we?
Right.
The book is a chronicle of your life, and listeners, if you didn't hear our earlier podcast, go back into the library. You can go on YouTube and you can listen to it. But this is a book that chronicles your entire career from when you started. One of the stories I really loved was your first trip to Monaco. And in the book, there are the photos, and you tell that story of taking the photos and writing on the back of the photo what it was and that sort of stuff. Tell us about that again.
Well, that was done for my parents. I was 20, let's say that was 62, so I was still 21 years old. I was just about to turn 22 that year. And I was touring Europe on a motorcycle. I had a secondhand Norton single-cylinder 350. And I'd been all the way down to Sicily to the Targa Florio, and on my way back north, I went to Monaco to watch the Grand Prix. And so it was actually the second Grand Prix I had ever seen because I'd been at the Riverside race 2 years before, that one-off Riverside race. although I wasn't covering anything. But and I wasn't covering it this time. I was just a spectator in the bleachers. But I had a good view of the first turn, which was the hairpin turn in those days, where they now go into the pits and head north. I guess it is. In those days, they came south around that point, and right where the pit entrance is, they turned sharp right 180 degrees through a hairpin bend and went on around the lap. So I was on the outside of that at a bleachers along with a couple hundred other people, and I had my little 35 millimeter film camera with me, and because there are people taller than I am in the world, I was holding it up over my head, and I just pointed it generally in where I thought it was the right place to point it. I just fired off a lot of pictures, like that. You had to crank the film in those days, and lo and behold, I got 2 or 3 decent prints of that, and there was a big accident.
Yeah.
There, several cars collided and spun around, and a wheel flew off, and things like that. Unfortunately, someone, one of the marshals got hit and didn't survive. But I didn't know that at the time. Once I had the print made, there in France, I must have been. I scribbled on the back of it and sent it home to my parents as sort of my first race report. So that's why we put it in the book.
The book also chronicles all of your time in Formula One. As an American, how hard was it to I'm going to be controversial here a little bit. I know that'll shock everybody. Exactly. The British press, the British teams, the European folks, they get pretty provincial about the fact that they don't think that Americans know much about Formula One. How difficult was it to acclimate yourself and be welcomed in that paddock area? Because you certainly were welcomed, and your reports showed that, because you always had the straight scoop. How hard was it to get yourself into that mix?
Jim, I would like to mention that my experience was not the same as yours. I didn't feel demeaned or dismissed in any way.
Good.
It helped that I already knew a lot of the people, because before I went to Europe to Formula One, I'd done the Can-Am series for 6 years. And Sebring and Watkins Glen and Indianapolis I'd covered a few times. The Daytona 500 I'd done. So I'd met a lot of international people, drivers, and I'd been writing for the Autosport magazine in England for all those years. So when I got over there, I was not a newcomer. I was meeting people that I might never have met before, but we certainly knew who each other were. And I didn't have this feeling that I was shut out in any way.
That's great. I mean, I had a very similar experience at Le Mans. I was very much accepted because of my work for the American Le Mans series, and again, it was people knew the ugly mug, and so they were much more welcoming. But I know that for some journalists that can be a hurdle that has to be crossed. What was your favorite thing about the years that you got to cover Formula One?
Could we have another 5 hours, please? Formula One certainly was then, and certainly is now, considered the premier form of motor racing in the world. There might be people who don't like certain elements of what it is today, me being one of them. But that said, it's we watched the Las Vegas race.
I watch every one of them. Sit there and complain, but I watch them all.
Right. What an incredible show! I mean, the energy, the enthusiasm, the size of the crowd, the important people there. I don't know I don't follow other sports or other forms of entertainment very much, but it's right up there with any of the major ones. And that, even though when I was doing it 40, 50 years ago, it still had the same thing, although it wasn't nearly as gaudy then as it is now. When you went to Monte Carlo, the harbor wasn't full of gigantic yachts. and water taxis. It had a few fairly large boats, but most of them were small boats, some fishing boats, some small pleasure craft. Rowboats. There were little rowboats that parked where today you have a multi-million-dollar yacht. So it wasn't as gaudy as it has become.
One of the other things that you and I have in common is the fact that I was lucky enough to participate in some racing things, as were you, and you document a couple of them in the book. You document racing with Revy, which was when you took your ride with Peter Revson in a Can-Am car, which had to be probably as frightening as it gets. Well, one of the other things that you did that we didn't get to talk about the first time around, and I was glad that we got to do a reprise of our interview, because you got to do some rallying with Denny Holm, and a lot of people don't realize, probably some do, many don't, though, that he was a hell of a rally driver as well as a former world champion.
Well, at that point, I don't know what happened afterwards, but that point in 1976, he had never done any rallying at all, or so he told everybody.
Yeah,
right. One might factor that in, but even though he grew up in New Zealand, which is the home of a lot of rally drivers, because the Millen brothers and so many others, because of the dirt roads they get to drive on and practice their opposite locking everywhere. Denny had that heritage and that background, but when they put me with him as his navigator, and I also was the driver between stages on the public road, so he could catch a nap. So I was both chauffeur and navigator, but I didn't drive any competition. I know I was really keen to see how he would approach his first special stage. Like, we did alternating routes. First of all, the field was a celebrity event, not part of any series, but it was a celebrity event that brought in luminaries from the two worlds of rallying and road racing together. For instance, we had James Hunt with us. We had several others. They also had some famous rally drivers like. I should know the names of the rally drivers. It's in the book, folks. Sorry.
Yeah, it is. It is. I think Timo Salonen might have been there.
People like that.
Hannu Mikkola was there. Yep.
So we alternated between paved road courses and special stages where you bounced through the dirt and flew over yumps, as they call them, and slid around corners, showering gravel and trying not to hit a tree or a rock or fall off into a ravine. And so Denny handled I didn't ride along on the circuit races, but, Denny was a racing driver, and he did, obviously he was driving hard and clean and knew what he was doing, and he was dicing with a couple of other people. When we got to the special stage, I'm sitting there strapped in with my helmet on and waiting for them to, let us go on the special stage into this narrow forest. And I was waiting to see how he handled it, and it was noticeable to me that tentative isn't the right word, but cautious is. He had his foot hard down. He was driving hard, and he was fishtailing and throwing the tail out and plowing the wheel through the gravel and so on. But I thought, if I had driven like that, I thought I was on the ragged edge. But I'd watched Denny drive from outside before, and when we got to the end of the stage, it was, 4 minutes or something. He asked me how he thought I had done, and I was prepared for the answer. I said, Denny, I would say it was about 85%. The background to that is 2 years earlier, I had ridden the same event with Russell Brooks, who was a British rally driver, and so I was comparing Denny's first stage to what I'd gotten used to with Russell 2 years earlier. And so on the basis of that, I said, I would say 85%. And he nodded, he agreed with that. And then from the rest of the day, stage after stage, and the next day and the third day, he just kept upping the pace until finally I would not have been able to tell any difference.
Wow.
The one remaining thing is Denny was a very cautious guy. He was not one of these wild and crazy drivers you sometimes encounter that we all think we probably are. But I remember one time in a foreign country in Argentina, I was in the same hotel as the McLaren team, just out of chance, not because of arrangement. And so I hitched a lift out to the track a couple of times with Denny driving in their borrowed car. And I noticed particularly he was quite smooth and cautious and observant. I mean, he never did anything that would cause us a problem. Whereas another year I had driven with James Hunt. And James Hunt's first words are, "Oh, I'll remember this from Formula 2." And he started racing all of the drivers driving to work. I mean, he was going for gaps and cutting in and out. I thought, okay, this is how racing drivers drive. And then I got to Denny Hulme, also a one-time world champion, who drove carefully. And I put it in the book. The thing that came out of that is I wrote that he was like a veteran airliner pilot, carefully bringing his 747 down the glide path with no dramas to a safe landing. That's how Denny drove, which makes his passengers quite happy, actually. But because of the power sliding and bouncing up and down, my head was hitting the roof sometimes on some of those bumps. That was a thrilling thing too, to watch him suss out what the road was going to do. We'd never been on this before, and the pace notes I was reading were just turn right, turn left type of thing. Sure. But so we'd be coming over a hill, and the road goes down, and it enters a forest, and you can see it turn right. But what does it do when it turns right? Does it go immediately left? Does it go up or down? Is there a tree right there? Denny would sort of not ease into it. I mean, he's still sliding into the turn, but he's got that little bit of edge left where if something had gone wrong, he still had some margin of control to use up before he hit something. And he never did hit anything. Whereas I noticed with Russell Brooks, his tendency seemed to be to go into a blind bend and just hurl the car in. And if it didn't do what he thought it did, well, then he'd sort it out.
He figured it out when he got there.
that struck me as the ongoing difference between rally drivers and circuit racers.
Now, during your time throughout your career, you developed a lot of personal relationships with a lot of really, really good race car drivers.
I'm really blessed in that, yes.
Yeah, and that speaks volumes about you as a person as well. Who do you? I know it's hard. These questions are always hard. But was there one special relationship that you really cherish? And as you were writing the book, I mean, did that come out?
I would name several, but sure, since we've been talking about Denny the Bear Hulme, that would be one. A lot of people in America just didn't get along with him. He was curt and gruff and grumpy to the certain people, but if you approach Denny intelligently and you'd show that you knew something about it, then he was happy to chat with you, and so we became not bosom buddies, but we were very, very cordial with each other. And I still remember him with great fondness. But I had a similar relationship with people like Jackie Stewart, Emerson Fittipaldi, James Hunt. I did a small book with James once. Tom Price was a brilliant fellow. Niki Lauda was a very interesting character. I won't say he was warm and friendly, but I got along with him quite well, and I did a good interview with him once where he told me things that I don't, it was the case where they were going to, get out of abandon the Nürburgring because it was too dangerous. Yes. And so I was opposed to that idea, so I said so. And Niki actually called up Autosport, and he arranged for me to meet him at Brands Hatch and discuss. We spent like an hour talking about his side of the story, and then I was able to express that to the readers so that we all knew where his head was at in terms of that, and it made sense.
That's so cool.
But then there's, I don't even name a whole bunch of others. Did I name Emerson Fittipaldi?
Yeah. What about
Peter Revson, of course, Bruce McLaren, although we lost him too early. But Mark Donohue, I had enormous respect and like for Mark.
What about Mario?
Mario. Oh, yes. Why didn't I put him first? I mean, Mario is apart from the fact that he was gracious enough to do a forward to the help me do a forward to the book. He was the thing about Mario is he's such a complete racer. I mean, he grew up as a child trying to race. He and his twin brother Aldo. You can see this on the internet. There's video of Mario showing where his home was in a little Croatian village that he lived in, and the steep downhill slope with cobblestones and the sharp bend at the top, and he and his brother cobbled together a little four-wheeled riding device, and they took turns bouncing down this thing and sliding around the corner at the end, and they're like 8 years old, 9 years old. And so that he then went to America and started winning dirt track races, and went to Indianapolis and won Indy, went to Formula One, won in Formula One, went to Daytona, won the 500, went to Pikes Peak, won Pikes Peak. The man's, and he was an ace in dirt track, sprint cars and so on. There are very few drivers, let me say, who show that kind of versatility and that mastery of so many different kinds of the sport, and so I rate Mario very, very highly. And I'm delighted when he takes my phone calls.
Lamar was the only one that got away.
Yes, right.
He was there at a time when versatility was allowed. Versatility was almost necessary if you wanted to make a living, because just staying in one sport, you couldn't make a living. Nowadays, I'm sure there are drivers out there who could do it. They're just not
there's
allowed
Larson.
to.
There's Kyle Larson. He's an all-rounder. Yep. Tony Stewart is too.
Yep. And I think even a couple of European guys could be better all-arounders if they were allowed to, but they just aren't. Well, Pete, I want to thank you again for joining us, and congratulations on the award. Right. Congratulations on just an outstanding tome.
If anybody's interested in Christmas coming up and they think they have a buddy who would use one, even if they've already got one themselves, PeteLyons.com. So thank you for the commercial message.
No problem, Pete. This is our Christmas episode, and we're trying to get the word out to all of our Motörhead friends that what the good books are, and I would fully endorse yours.
Thank you very much.
It's always good to hear from Pete Lyons, and he's never short of a story or 10, and that it was absolutely right with that as well. So congratulations on.
And they're always good stories.
Yeah, they're not ones where you go, yeah. But,
really?
And with Pete, you've never heard them before either. That's the other thing. Yeah. But congratulations. My travels on Racer Road, Can-Am and Formula One in their golden age, by Pete Lyons.
Sorry, my travels on Racer Road should have just had an award for the best title. I love that.
Yeah, it's great.
It's a great turn of phrase.
And the other book with a motorsport bent was the motorsport book for less than £50, and that was a bit of a teaser in some ways, because it's AJ Foyt Volume 1, Survivor, Champion and Legend by Art Garner, and that's come out from the US publishers Octane Press, and is £37. So I reckon that's pretty good value.
And AJ Foyt is going to be definitely more than one volume, and he's definitely on our hit list for next year to make sure that we get him on.
That would be amazing,
as well, dear listeners. So
now, a book which came out too late to be included in this year's RAC Awards is called F1 Racing: The Ultimate Companion. Bit of a sticky title, but I'll live with that. It did, however, give us an opportunity for a chat with the book's author and a very good friend to all of us on Historic Racing News, Bruce Jones. Well, there's been a whole host of books over the course of the last few months about 75 years of Formula One, some of them are looking that Formula One kind of started with Sebastian Vettel and went downhill from there. But I'm joined by our good friend Bruce Jones, who has written a great book called F1 Racing, The Ultimate Companion. Bruce, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on board.
Thanks, Paul. Glad to be.
And congratulations on the book, because you've come at it from a very, very different way. And you've come at it geographically, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. I mean, I've long felt that particularly new-coming fans to Formula One, you touched on it there, probably don't know a great deal about the history, but I thought it was really important that they understood about the circuits as much as the teams, the drivers, the cars, because obviously they're the stage on which the racing takes place. And if they think it's, the only race that carries on is, well, Silverstone and Monaco from 1950 and in their mind, but I want them to know about the great circuits, the Watkins Glen, the Fuji Speedway, the Pescara Road Circuit, all these things that were part of the rich tapestry of Formula One. So I discussed with a publisher, Michael O'Mara Books, about doing a really good guide to circuits. I've done one before, but 20, 30 years ago. And they sort of evolved the idea, bear with me on this one, they turned it around. So you had countries that had produced world champions and had Grand Prix circuit. You had countries that have produced world champions that don't have any Grand Prix circuit, like Finland. Then you had countries, I'm still going on this theme, by the way, it really was splitting the thing, because, and then it doesn't really matter what the thing was. It became quite convoluted, so we started knitting in, great drives at circuits, and they said, we have a bit more on the drivers. So there's quite a lot about the drivers in the book, the great drivers from the leading countries. But actually, I just simply really enjoyed being able to dig back and look at how a lot of countries, they were fairly equitable with us in the 1930s, but they never came to have a round of the World Championship. We forget the global spread and how cities put money up to have races. I mean, France in particular was littered. Almost every seaside resort had some form of Grand Prix type race in the 20s and 30s. So it let me go on a sort of merry dance around the world. But as much as anything, my eternal battle, and you know this, Paul, from dealing with loads of books, is to get your publishers to actually produce photos that really tell as much of the story as you want to. And I think in this one in particular, they listened. They didn't hit all the targets I wanted, but actually just flicking through now, I wanted, if you had an image of the Saint-Jovite circuit, it needed to have the trees in the background so you could see the wonderful, fall colours of Canada. Try explaining that to a picture editor. But, I got some my hit list. I got the fact that, the Aintree circuit, really wide. The cars in the early 1960s up near the very small, the 1.5 litre cars. There was a suburb just over the fence in the background. You could see the giant grandstands. It was it's a bit like having a shot at a rally car and going in tight. The whole point about rallying, you want the car to be small and the main image to show the mountains, the desert, the whatever. So there was a lot of sort of chasing along those lines. But I just wrote the book. Actually, an accolade was given by our good friend Toby Gunter, that does Goodwood Radio. It fell into his paws, and he put a little message saying, Bruce, actually, it's rather good. So I'll take that as a massive He said, I learnt a lot of things, and that is the point. There's a lot of minutiae in there that you won't get in an average book. And I wrote this before it got to 75 years of Formula One. They stuck the sticker on the front. I'm sure that will help sell a few more copies. But the thing about it really is to educate people, whether they got into Formula One in the 1980s, the 2000s, the 2020s. You want to go back, and I want anyone who reads this book to go, oh, nice pictures. Actually, the words aren't too bad either. But I want them to go, I didn't know that. And, that's the point about a book. It's about letting people understand those that went before them and where they fit in. Of course, if you look at any Formula One statistics, you have to look a very long way down to find Juan Manuel Fangio, because of course now 24 Grand Prix a year, 25 points to win, etc., etc. So he goes charging down despite his 5 world titles. Yeah. I just want people to look across those facts and understand how, well, the whole sport has changed over the intervening decades, of which now there have been more than a few. And And just if they can look at a picture and go, God, those open face helmets, they're racing open face helmets. I didn't know that, and so on and so forth. But by dropping in circuit maps, talking about the various characters that did well, it's a bit like my good friend John Watson. Put him on a street circuit, put his McLaren at the back, and twice in the States he produced these most astonishing runs right up through the field. And it's those sort of events. So in many ways, Paul, it's a celebration of the circuit, but because my arm was twisted, I had to put a lot more in about the drivers from each of those leading countries. And also to point out that in so many ways, of course, New Zealand has never had a Formula One Grand Prix, despite producing, Chris Amon, Bruce McLaren, Liam Lawson at the moment, and a host of others coming up. But they've got fantastic circuits, and actually, if I could have scope to do another book, have you ever heard of the Baskerville circuit in Tasmania?
No, I haven't.
There was a historic meeting down there a few weeks ago. That is the next place I want to go. Great big mountains in the background, probably raining if I go, but
yeah.
I get, I've been in this game since 1980, but I started reporting in 1985, but started working on Autosport at the end of 83, and I still get a thrill out of going to circuits I haven't been to before.
Yeah.
Because you do fall into a sort of fairly regular beat. I remember for years going, oh, it's Hockenheim again. How I pine now for that old-fashioned Hockenheim when they went off.
Yes.
Some of them came back at the end of the lap and then burst into the stadium. But it is, in recent years, I've been very fortunate to go out to the Far East a lot. And some of the lesser-known Japanese circuits are just mind-bogglingly wonderful. Their version of Cadwell Park, but with bigger mountains in the background. Sugo, by the way. But, it's to be able to actually also walk around the circuits. Often that doesn't happen because you've flown out, you literally arrive and start talking. Actually, can I tell you a little story about it? I think it was 2 years ago. I missed a connection on the way out to Sepang. And my next flight wasn't for 14 hours. That was then delayed. And I thought, hold on. And I eventually, courtesy of the fact the passport queue that normally takes an hour took me 5 minutes, I arrived at Sepang and walked into the pit building 10 minutes before I was live on a Saturday morning and just walked in. Did my commentary, went out. So actually there is probably another book, there's definitely another book about the mishaps of travel. And anyone who has travelled on the sort of Grand Prix beat, they will all have had some really, really tight moments. I always think back to something that the great Tony Dodgins wrote in F1 Racing in its early years about a trip that he and his motoring news rival Mark Skewis used to travel together. I mean, they were the Calamity Brothers. Not many pieces you could read that just make you cry with laughter. But I mean, there are so many slips you can have. But now, of course, you're not going to be travelling around Europe in a camper van as journalists used to. It's now an awful lot of Heathrow and off to beyond. I don't know how they make the money to do all that, but I'm digressing. But I think it's just the thrill of going to circuits, whether they're new ones that don't even have racing anymore, or just ones you haven't been to. And to me, that really is the thrill, sort of 40 years on.
But it's interesting that you should say that, because that's exactly the feel that I got from your book, which was that it's the bigger picture. That, I mean, you've worked in Formula One television, you've done, there's nothing you haven't done, and that with modern Sky TV coverage and things, the coverage of the race is in such incredible depth that you can get all the information that you could possibly wish for, but you don't get the feel that you're talking about when you walk into a racetrack. And I can still remember all those years ago walking into Spa-Francorchamps for the first ever time, and you look to your left and you see Eau Rouge, and it just takes your breath away. And that there's so many circuits like that, and I think with many books, I always classify them as, and then we went to Monza, which is that it's where people say, and then we went to Monza and we were 0.71 seconds off pole, but that was because. And your book actually talks about and shows with those pictures as well. It shows that it's much more than that, isn't it?
It is, and I think it's very easy for us, Paul, to sort of talk back to how it was in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, as we sort of grew up in the game. But it was much more organic then. And if you even bought yourself a pit pass that you could get at certain circuits on a Grand Prix weekends at Brands Hatch, you'd probably see the crew chief, because there were only 12 employees at McLaren at the time, and you see them busy working in the background. There was nowhere to hide, but really it's about being there for me. And there's still circuits I want to go to. I was always really upset that when we had the Indian Grand Prix for, I think it was 3 years, that was a fantastic circuit, the Buddha International Circuit. I know there were all sorts of logistical issues, and getting cars in and out of customs was difficult, but that was a circuit with flow. And I'm going next weekend to Sepang, and I love that circuit. I really think it was one of the best Herman Tilke tracks. But what we don't have is the sheer diversity of circuits across the course of the season. Obviously, we're now having more street circuits, more American circuits, but there are other places in the States I'd love to see cars. Imagine Road Atlanta having a Grand Prix. Road America is there. Why not? Because you want to see these cars unleashed. Do you remember when they had the Grand Prix in the early 90s at Phoenix?
Yeah.
Out in Arizona, the locals, famously at the first weekend they were there, more people attended an ostrich race outside town than attended the Grand Prix. But they would see the Formula One cars not hitting the big figures that impress a lot of new-coming fans, because they were basically accelerating. But, you then go to someone like COTA, still one of my favourite circuits, and that's got proper flow. They've sort of picked and chosen sort of combinations of the best curves from around the circuits that had preceded them in Formula One, and it's got that wonderful thing, gradient change.
Yeah.
You mentioned Spa-Francorchamps. I'll throw in Clermont-Ferrand. It's out. You find a circuit that gives you gradient, and that's something really, really worth having. And even gradient in a street race. That famous shot at Long Beach where they turn right and the cars are literally plummet down the slope. You go to Pau. Have you ever been to Pau, Paul? Oh
no, I haven't. No,
fantastic. Monaco's got a little bit of vertical, but Pau so much more. And then Macau. All really tight, difficult circuits. Formula One cars, alas, too large for them now. But it's not only countryside circuits that have the wonders of topography. And think back to the original Österreich ring. Superb. In fact, one time I was going when it was the Red Bull. No, before that, the A1 ring, when it had been reincarnated and the fastest part of the circuit locked off. And we arrived at a little airfield, flying out on the Formula One plane from Biggin Hill. And I was walking across it was concrete, not tarmac, and I suddenly went, oh my golly, Lorenzo Bandini, 1964. It was the Zeltweg airfield. And it was a military airfield, guards on the gate. And I suddenly thought, God, Bob Anderson charging around all those straw bales. And that was a sort of bonus. So I count that as a half visit. I just happened to go across it in a it's only 2 miles, if that, from the current Red Bull ring, just at the foot of the valley.
Yeah.
But it is those circuits. And in fact, just flicking through the book as I talk to you, I've forgotten some of the other places that just are excellent. But to me, if I could encourage anyone to read the book, that would be great, and learn some stuff. But if they could then go to another circuit, that would be the reward. If they could find a circuit in the book, I really, really want to go there. That would make me very happy indeed. Because I think we all know, you watch it on TV, you get all sorts of extraordinary vision, but I tell you what, you'll remember far longer, standing on the banking on a corner, looking down there. You take ownership of that view and you get the vibe of the place. And these days, you visit Monza and sadly they're gradually pulling down the old buildings, but only sort of 25, 30 years ago, a lot of those buildings were there from the 1930s. It still had that history dripping from it, which is a very hard thing to have because, you look how Silverstone has changed out of necessity in terms of safety. But Monza did have that wonderful enclosed area around the paddock with little shops and the cafes and sort of gone. But no, if this book can encourage people to go to a circuit and just have another experience, then I'll be really, really pleased.
Because I think with what you've done, you've broken it down for a start into continents. You've done Europe, America, Asia and the Middle East, Africa and Oceania, and that all of those are then broken down into the individual countries. And you talk about Morocco and you talk about the South Korea episode, shall we call it, and those kind of things.
Can I tell a story about the South Korean circuit?
Yes, please.
You know I'm going to carry on. Flew into Seoul. I was going there for a GT race a handful of years ago. Took the train into the city. Did that thing where you learn by your mistakes. I bought my train ticket. It's a 3.5-hour ride down to the south of the country. Then realised I hadn't bought a seat ticket, so I sat on a fold-down seat by the lavatories for the 3.5 hours. Best journey, but beautiful countryside. Arrived down near to the circuit, and as I was queuing for a taxi to take me to my hotel, these aren't words you want to see on your phone, pinging onto your phone when it's vibrating in your pocket. You've just arrived in South Korea. It said, National Security Alert. I thought, oh, I can't believe it. I come the first, North Korea's attacking, but actually, nothing to do with that. It was because it was about 44 degrees, so about 110 degrees, and they were telling people to get inside. And I do a circuit walk there because it was so hot. But it's sitting there unfinished. Remember, that whole environment was supposed to be a sort of motor city and this and that and the other. And, of course, Vietnam, they built the circuit to get a Grand Prix about, probably 4 or 5 years ago now. That didn't happen, but they all look good. But you sort of look at them and go, this will be a 1, 2, 3 year wonder, won't it? They'll have a contract, and once it's over.
Sadly, you're right. And I think that's why it's so good in your book that you've looked at some of those ones which maybe they ran a Grand Prix for 5, 10, 15 years. And, yeah, as you say, just get people to it. I think you and I are both out of the same mould that says there's so much more to motorsport than there is Formula One. And I think that an awful lot of people will look at this and say, well, yes, I would love to go to some of those circuits in Japan or some of those circuits in Asia. There's no Formula One race there anymore, but I'm still going to go. And that's if the book does nothing but that, then that's brilliant.
Yeah, this year, 2025, I was doing much more historic racing, and I went to a circuit that somehow I'd never been to, Dijon-Prenois. And all I knew about it, of course, were photographs, but of course that famous battle between René Arnoux and Gilles Villeneuve in the closing laps, both fighting over second. But what I didn't know until I went there and walked it was the fact that great chunks of the circuit you never see on TV because they didn't have enough cameras around it. And Dijon is now one of my favourite circuits. Again, much more up and down than you realise. But there is something about being there and realising, oh, if I stand on this corner, I can see 3 points on the circuit, and sort of just standing there with a very nice cup of coffee and a baguette. I didn't say rillette, I said baguette there. But don't too much at the ball, But yeah, it is. So I thoroughly enjoy going to Dijon. But, sometimes if you don't do a championship that goes there, you don't go there.
No. And there are so many great circuits. And I love the opportunity when you go to some of those circuits to do a bit of the motorsport archaeology as well, of looking at how things have changed and evolved. And, I can remember, again, back at Spa, going out onto the circuit and seeing where they changed the corner out on the far side of the circuit to make it faster so that they could say it was the fastest circuit in Europe, at Stavelot. And that it used to be a hairpin, and then they changed it into that perilous right-hander, which was sort of semi-banked, and they were battling with it wasn't Rouen, it was Raz, and Raz did the same thing at Thielois, where they fastened that, if that's a word, so that they could get the same thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you think about the eventual score, there was that Spa-Francorchamps, the original circuit, going into the neighbouring valley with an average lap speed, the fastest lap in sports cars was over 150 miles an hour. Astonishing. And a little aside, working with Formula One TV, so I think it was 2002, I was doing a little preview piece at Stavelot, standing there, and I was really pleased with it. A couple of, extra takes because the last minute a car would drive through, and they said, "We can't use that. It looks as though you're standing on a public road." Hold my God. You can only try so hard, Paul.
Yeah, and sometimes you just want to beat people over the head with a large machete. But we're not allowed to do that anymore, unfortunately. But no, that's right. I thoroughly recommend this book to our readers. If you want to know more about Formula One in terms of it's facile to say the history. It's more than that. It's the soul, the beating heart of Formula One. Then buy this book, Formula One F1 Racing: The Ultimate Guide. You can get it from Michael O'Mara Books. It costs £25, which is a steal if you ask me. And that's you can get it either from mombooks or one word.com. Or all good motoring booksellers, or of course on this thing that they call the internet, and that I would thoroughly recommend a read of this. It'll be something that you can dip in and out of over Christmas and keep you away from all the family, which is probably a good thing anyway. Bruce, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about this. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope you're going to come and talk to us again soon.
Well, thanks very much, Paul, and keep up the good work with Historic Racing News. It's a really, really great string to the bow.
Thank you, Bruce, very much. There are lots of ways to keep up with Historic Racing News. Our podcast comes out on the first Wednesday of every month. The 2-hour show includes interviews with drivers and other personalities from years gone by, plus news of historic events like the Goodwood Revival and the Silverstone Festival. And Jim Roller keeps us up to speed on happenings stateside and looks at the activities both on and off the track in the USA.
And you can also follow us on our YouTube channel, HRN Chronicles. It's our version of a time machine. We have archive features, exclusive interviews, and behind-the-scenes stories going way back into the history of our glorious sport. Plus, we keep an eye on the latest classic and competition car auction news. It's a place where motorsports history lives.
And don't forget our amazing Facebook page. With over 1 million views a month, it is one of the leading social media channels for the historic racing fan. We feature tales from years gone by, news from around the racing world, and we also take the opportunity to flesh out the stories we cover on our podcasts with photographs and yet more background information.
If you would like to find more editions of the Historic Racing News podcast, try searching Historic Racing News wherever you get your podcasts.
The YouTube channel is simply called HRN Chronicles.
And just search Facebook for the Historic Racing News page.
Now back to the Historic Racing News podcast and Paul Tarsey.
Now, I venture to suggest that a pretty high percentage of us have visited Le Mans or at one time or another, probably several others. And if you have, there's also a high chance that you bought the books published by Evro, which deal with the history of the race in 10-year chunks. Up until now, the esteemed Quentin Spurring has put these books together, but he's now retired, and John Brooks has taken up the challenge. It gave me an opportunity to talk to Brooksy. Now, many people will have copies of the 8 books with the royal blue covers, which feature the Le Mans 24 Hours. Each book covers a decade, and the latest edition, I'm delighted to say, covering 2000 to 2009, has recently been released by Evro Publishing. And I am delighted to welcome to the Historic Racing News podcast the author of said latest book, John Brooks. John, thank you very much for coming on. The book like this is in volumes, huge amount of work, and it's taken you an awful lot of effort to get to where we are.
Indeed. I think I nearly drove the saintly publisher Mark Hughes up the wall. We had planned 2 years and it took 4 in the end, but there's a lot to tell because it's not just about the cars at the front, the Audis, the Peugeots, etc., but really anybody who manages to get onto the grid at Le Mans has a story to tell. And it's worth relating. Some were better than others. Let's leave it at that.
Over the years, probably less in let's call it your decade, but looking back over the 60s, 70s, 80s, there were some really strange, oddball things, weren't there?
Oh God, yes. But we had one or two, even in the Lamborghini until they got their act together, was not great. And in the decade I'm looking at now, perhaps we won't talk about the Nissan GTR LM. But anybody who attempts to go to Le Mans on a professional basis is pushing themselves hard. Having worked with teams, worked in the media, I did 36 in a row working there. There were many challenges that you would have. Security could be interesting.
I mean, you first went to Le Mans when Noah was a boy, didn't you? What was your first year?
1978. I was interested probably from about 68 onwards, and like a lot of people of that generation, took one look at the Porsche 917 and the Ferrari 512, and you just thought, wow. I got lucky and I got to see them race once in the period. But in 78, it was suggested we go to Le Mans. We'd had the year before where Porsche had, and particularly Jackie Ickx, had driven an incredible race, winning against all odds. 78 was less so for Porsche. Renault got their act together and did the job. So I went 3 years as a spectator, the last of which I had a camera that functioned as opposed to the year before. Well, actually, the camera was all right. It was the photographer the year before. He couldn't figure out how to load film properly, so nothing came out. But by then, I was already getting media passes for Formula 3 and other national stuff. I was lucky enough to get along in late 82 to Brands Hatch and watch Jackie Ickx, once again, win the World Championship by about 4 seconds. Quite an incredible achievement. So when the opportunity, and I started helping out a promising young photographer who just launched his own agency, a guy called Keith Sutton.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So I missed a couple of years at Le Mans. I went to South Africa for the Grand Prix. I think I'd had a tax rebate or something, decided to spend it. I went to Monaco a couple of times because one of my mates down the pub, his parents had a flat in Monaco, and they used to get us into the Rascasse restaurant.
Wow.
I think it was about £100 for the weekend. If you'd probably have to add 5 or 6 noughts onto that now to go there. But sports car racing was always my thing. I mean, I covered Formula 3 during the Palmer to Senna years and enjoyed it. But endurance racing was the thing. And Group C was on a great development path. It wasn't always as brilliant as people nowadays reminisce. There were some god-awful races, but watching, going there for the first time in 84 with a pass, and the factory Porsches didn't show up. They had an argument with the ACO, I think, or with somebody, probably the ACO, and Yost managed to win. And then he repeated that the following year, amazingly. Yes, a feat he repeated in 96 and 97.
Now, the book, as I said, it covers the years 2000 to 2009. So straight 10 years. And in many ways, we could perhaps call it the Audi years. Were Audi just too good?
Yes, in some ways they were. They went away from the race in 1999 and looked hard at themselves and said, okay, what have we not done right here? And they went away and said, okay, we won't run 2 cars, we'll run 1. And we'll have 3 examples there. I mean, one of the things that was maybe the foundation of Audi's success was the engine. To my knowledge, that particular 3.6 litre twin turbocharged V8 only ever suffered 1 engine failure in its whole career. And that was in 2000 during one of the qualifying sessions. So that was, if you like, the foundation. The other thing they did was they looked at what are the possible weaknesses. Okay, transmission, gearbox, that sort of thing. So they came up with a rally-based solution, which was to be able to change the rear end they got it down to 4.5 minutes at one stage before the ATO banned it. But I mean, they spent substantial money. They used it as a marketing exercise as well as rewarding people within Audi. I mean, one fact is when they arrived in 99, I believe they sold 674,000 cars. When they left, I think in 2016 or 17, I can't remember, 16, they were on 1.6 million. Now, it's not all down to Le Mans, but certainly it raised the profile of the brand, which had already climbed with the Audi Quattro, the various Audi 200s. It was the junior prestige brand of Germany after Mercedes and BMW. But by the end of 2009, you would have said they were all fairly equal.
Yeah, indeed. Now, just remind us what the class structure was like in that decade.
Well, there were basically 4 classes. There were the prototypes at the top, which was intended for factory or very serious efforts, principally factories, though. So that was LMP 900, which was a 900 kilo weight, or it became LMP1. The junior class was first known as LMP 675, so there was a 675 kilo weight limit, and then became LMP2. The 675 created an opportunity that MG took advantage of by basically building a car with the same power to weight ratio as the Audi R8 that was winning the race. And when you put someone like Mark Blundell behind the wheel, it went pretty quickly. In GTs, we had LMGTS, which became LMGT1, and LMGT, which became LMGT2. And while they don't get the headlines, perhaps, that the Audis and the Bentleys and the Peugeots got, without them, the race would not have prospered in the way it did. The ACO made a mistake, or they let the FIA or FISA during the mid-80s almost shove GT racing into oblivion in Europe. Certainly, there was nothing. And it only came back when 28 cars started in 1992, and Michel Cosson, who'd just been appointed ACO president, realised that unless they brought GTs back, and this was prompted largely through 2 weeks after that race, Stefan Rotella arrived with the Venturi Trophy and 55 cars on the grid with lots of very rich men. So GT racing is something that the public can relate to. Okay, no one thinks that you can go and buy a Corvette or a Ferrari 550 Maranello or even a 996 GT3 Porsche for the road and it'll be anything like the car on the track, but the foundations are there, the DNA.
I'm not sure that I agree with you there. I think that certainly quite a few people on the terraces would think that 911, that Corvette, they have metaphorically taken off the hubcaps and given it a few stickers, and away it goes. Do you think people value those GTs, very highly sophisticated racing cars?
Indeed. I mean, if you're taking a basic road car and converting it for action on track, then you're putting a hell of a lot of work into trying to get round the compromises that you have to make. When you're building a road car, you're not thinking of the ultimate performance or where what the front to rear weight distribution is, etc., etc. But essentially, the battles between Corvette racing, first off with Viper, Oreca Viper that is, and then the arrival of ProDrive with the Ferrari and then with the Corvette, that kept people on the edge of their seats. Now, a lot of this is also down to the fact that the public could understand what was going on. First off, there was Radio Le Mans, and the people, as you know only too well, who were commentating on that would be aware that there were 4 classes and they would keep people informed. Then the ACO cottoned on copying the American Le Mans series by first off lighting up the actual number on the side of the car and then introducing the light system. So you had 3 lights, there were 4 colours, so 1 for each class, and if you were first, second or third, you had your lights there. And that helped to, if you like, give the public an understanding of what the class battles were.
You said your first Le Mans was 78. I was 12 months after you. My first was in 79. And yeah, if you went out on the circuit at that sort of time, you saw a pair of headlights come towards you and the car went past and then it went dark again. And that I can remember priding myself on being able to identify at least some of the cars by the way the headlights looked as they came towards you. But now it's so completely different.
Quite. And the whole thing has changed, obviously, with the communications. People can hold a screen in front of themselves now instead of carrying a telephone wire behind them. And we've become much more sophisticated in that side of things. And also, I think the public, the audience now demands more communication, more understanding of things. When I went in 78, we had a rough idea what was going on because it looked, the French got very excited every time a Renault went past the start-finish line. So we took it they must be winning. And there were broadcasts as well. Bob Constanduras and others like that would come on and would do live broadcasts over the tannoy, but sometimes you could hear it and sometimes you couldn't.
Oh yes, I can remember standing underneath a telegraph pole somewhere with a loudspeaker attached, trying to make the notes. But it's changed, and good or bad, right or wrong, it's changed. I mean, you mentioned about the GT classes, and I appreciate very strongly that they're much more than just making up the numbers, and there are some great stories, and I love in your book, there's some great stories about GT cars, and you look at ultra professional teams like Corvette, like Aston Martin / ProDrive, and then you look at people like the gallant TVR team. As you were doing your research, did you end up with a favourite?
Ooh, there's a question. Well, favourite might not be the right word, but one of the things I most found was the levels of respect between the teams. Things like when Peugeot were supposed to win, say in 2008, and they didn't. They were 5 seconds a lap faster at least, but they were up against an Audi team that realised they couldn't win on track, so they would win, in the pits. And they would hope for rain, which came, and they had one of the strongest driving trios that's ever existed, Alan McNish, Tom Christensen and Dindo Capello. But after the race, there's a lot of celebrating and beer going on in the Audi area. And then they invited the Peugeot mechanics in and saluted them. And the reverse happened the following year. And it was a similar story down in Corvette racing and ProDrive, or Aston Martin racing as it was. And there was a high level of respect between all of these people. And having been part of a team for a few years, you soon realise just how hard the guys work. I mean, it's crazy. And even the smallest, weakest team, and there have been a few, they pull off miracles just to get there. So being a member of the media was quite easy compared with what the guys had to do.
I can remember when I was working with the Radio Le Mans team during the period of your book. And you think, yeah, we definitely have it easy, very much so.
As I said, there is a level of respect. And I think what it is that I always felt, even if we didn't win our class, and we did one year, and we should have done another couple, but things happen, just getting to the finish. If you look on the faces of the guys who work on the cars, or even the people who run the hospitality or whatever, they've all pushed themselves to the limit, and it feels like you've won. It feels like victory.
You also talk in your book, quite rightly, about the people who are standing there on the terraces in the grandstands, who in many ways make the event, because in the same way as Wimbledon attracts people who know nothing about tennis, or Royal Ascot spectators are not necessarily avid horse racing fans, the crowd at Le Mans is different from most of the motor races, and they are very much part of the atmosphere, aren't they?
I would totally agree with that. I can only imagine, perhaps, because there's that feeling you walk through the gate at 7 o'clock on the Saturday morning. You've already been there a week, so you're worn out. Possibly through over refreshment earlier on in the week. If you've been there as a fan, you'll have been camping, so it might have been a bit hot and thirsty to be out there. But there's a sense of anticipation. You get the warm-up goes, and that happens, and suddenly there's support races on, and there is a climbing sense of anticipation. And the only other places I could imagine that would be, one of which I haven't been to, which is Indianapolis. And I would imagine that race day would be quite a platform there. Sebring is similar in a way to Le Mans, because people who went there in the 50s then took their children, then their grandchildren, great-grandchildren. And there's a sense of community there, which you also get at Le Mans. People go to the same campsites. They may not see the other people for a year or so, but they all sort of gel together because they've got this common interest in endurance racing. And, the Le Mans nearly perished in the 90s. And through the wisdom and the common sense of Cosson and his crew, and then Plassard took over, and now Fillon, they've managed to create a world championship. They've created platforms so as people can run businesses and have fun going racing. We have a World Endurance Championship. We have whatever it's called this week, IMSA, American Le Mans Series. We've got an Asian Le Mans Series. We've got a European Le Mans Series. Not only that, Cosson brought the bikes back. They disappeared. And the motorcycle side of it is very important. He also managed to offload the circuit to the local authorities and various sort of bodies in the La Sarthe region. And suddenly the ACO was not anywhere near as in danger of collapsing as it had been at the beginning of the 90s. So, yes, the atmosphere is completely different to most other events.
I've been on the ferry on the way back. I think of one particular time when I was working for Radio Le Mans, and I had to be back in the UK for Monday, and so I came overnight on the ferry on Sunday night out of Caen, and so I was there in the queue for the ferry in my Radio Le Mans liveried Audi, because they were sponsoring the station, and inevitably a few people came up and said the nice things that you would expect them to say. And there were three blokes who came up. They said, "Were you on the radio?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Do you have a good time? Enjoy the race?" And they said, "Yeah, we had a fantastic time. Loved every minute of it. It was absolutely fantastic. Brilliant race. Met new people. It was absolutely fabulous. Oh, by the way, who won?" And I thought, okay, you've had a good time.
Yes, quite. Well, there is an element of that there, and we saw the British have their challenges from the Danes and the Dutch, certainly for refreshment and enthusiastic support of their heroes, Jan Lammers or Jan Magnussen, and of course Mr. Le Mans himself, TK. It was strange though, writing about it all again. I mean, it brought memories flooding back, and I just realised how lucky I was to have been there as a small cog in this giant machine, and I was lucky to be able to scrape a living out of it somehow, and the races. Some races were better than others. Sometimes the weather would either be too hot or too wet, or both. It's not quite Spa level where you get every season within a 6-hour race. Maybe not snow, but everything else.
Yeah, but certainly it can get close to that point. And you say that you've completed this, and many congratulations for the book. And you're working on the next one, aren't you?
Indeed. I've been drawing up tables today. I've done the data tables for the 10 years. Now, shall we say, the source material, like the annual, there's the odd mistake in it. So the best thing to do is to go to the Alcamel site and just get all the timesheets and everything from there. There are anomalies you find in it, and there are mysteries that you'll never explain. I'm then going to go on and do the 10-year tables, the list of drivers and all that stuff, because I think it's a good way of getting yourself refamiliarized with the decade. So I've got another 15 months, I'm told by the publisher, to have this ready. Not sure. But Mark Hughes has been incredibly supportive, as has the whole Evro team. A whole load of people. You send questions to people, and almost all answer. It might be, for example, George Howard Chappell or John Manchester from Zytec. I'll send him a note saying, "What was that engine type?" And very patiently they reply, and they help out. There's been a lot of people who've been generous with their knowledge and their time. And the other thing was, I had it slightly easier in one way because we had a thing called Daily Sports Car, which was effectively around from 2002 onwards. And Malcolm Cracknell had who was the founder. He had all manner of information that even the likes of the Gary Watkins and the Andrew and Michael Cotton would struggle, because he had two guys in Le Mans who would pop into the circuit once or twice a week, and they would talk with Poissonneau or Perdry or Gachet, whoever. And You learn so much from all of that. The problem it creates then is that you write too much.
But yeah, I think with a book like this, where you have so much information, that's not going to be a criticism that anybody's going to throw at you. And one of the things I love about your book is that you can flick through it while you're eating your cornflakes, and you can say, "Oh yeah, I remember that. And I remember that car. And I remember that race." But also the amount of detailed information that you can get down to very quickly and very easily, and just so that people know, every year is tabulated separately. So you go in and you can say, "Oh, what was that particular car that I remember going off at the Porsche curves at 3:00 in the morning?" And you can find it. And I take my hat off to you, because I am I have nowhere near the attention to detail that you must have to be able to put it all together.
Well, there was partly fear as well. If you look at what Quentin Spurring managed in his 7 previous volumes, 7 or 8, I can't remember, he set a standard that if I can get somewhere near it, I'd be very happy. I mean, I also really enjoy research and finding out things I didn't know at the time, or correcting stories or impressions, because things do get said and they get written, and then suddenly you find actually that's not right at all. And I was incredibly grateful for the opportunity to do this. I can warn anybody who's thinking of doing these sort of books, you don't make much money at it. For the amount of hours put in, I think I was earning about 3 an hour. And you've got to be, you've got to go back to the last 2 centuries ago for that to be a meaningful wage.
Yeah, and you had to go up a chimney for that.
Yes, exactly. And I'm a bit larger than most chimneys are.
You and me both, mate. It's a great book. Thoroughly recommend it. I know, as I said at the top of this interview, that many people will have the other 8 editions already, and this will be a vital addition to that collection. The book is available from everopublishing.com. It's available from good motoring booksellers, and of course it's available online. It costs £70, and it's worth every penny, even if you only look through it over your cornflakes. But if you want something which gives you a highly detailed look at that decade, it's very, very well worth it. John, thank you for coming on the show, and thank you also for writing this great book.
Thank you for your kind words. It'll motivate me to get on with the next book after we finish.
Right, off you go then. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
You're listening to the Historic Racing News Podcast, a copyrighted presentation of historic racing news in association with White Squirrel Studios. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or usage without the expressed written permission of Historic Racing News is strictly prohibited. Now back to the Historic Racing News Podcast and Paul Tarsey.
Now, we're all getting excited about our involvement with Race Retro, which takes place from the 20th to the 22nd of February at Stoneleigh in Warwickshire. It's going to be a blast, because all 3 of us, plus some very special guests, will be on the live stage. Jim, I hope you've booked your flights already.
Yes, indeed.
Hey.
Good man. And I don't think you're going to be flying from Southampton, are you, Paul?
No, I'm not. I'm just hoping that, unlike in previous years, I won't need my water wings, so fingers crossed on that one.
I suspect we're probably going to be riding up together in one of the Baron's modes of conveyance.
We'll go by a horse and 6, by a carriage and 6. Yes. That sounds quite appealing, actually. It's
Rather
going to be
you than
I
me.
mean, it'll be fun for all three of us, and we've already got some very special guests, which we'll tell you about in the January show. We'll be live on stage every day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Not all of every day, I'm pleased to say, but we'll be on stage doing that, interviews, and playing our game show of opinionated nonsense, which is Corridors of Power. So do come and say hello when you're at Race Retro. Again, I wanted to know what was going on, so I gave Gabes Ewbank a ring at Race Retro, and this is what he said. Now, we promised that we would keep you up to date on everything that's happening with Race Retro, and it's certainly beginning to get some momentum in terms of the things that are going on. And Gabes Ewbank, our resident star from Race Retro, is back on the show. Gabes, thank you so much for sparing the time to come on. And presumably, now that you've got your last show out of the way, that Race Retro is beginning to gain some momentum.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Paul. And what an intro. I'm not sure I've ever had an intro that nice. So thank you very much. Yeah, so we finished Classic Motor Show, which seems like months ago now, but it was only a few weeks ago, and we turned our attention very quickly to Race Retro, and we've got some news just for you guys that we would love to tell you about and tell your listeners about. So I suppose just to kick things off, if I ask you a question, so we've got the 60th anniversary celebrations happening this year at Race Retro, and the anniversaries of the 1966 Le Mans. If you have one guess what car you might see at Race Retro this year, have at it.
4 digits, GT4T.
You're absolutely correct.
Yeah!
You know your stuff, Paul.
I should do, it's my job.
So, yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. And we have to thank the GT40 Enthusiast Club for this, but something really special to kick off the celebrations of what an incredible race and spectacle that was. So obviously born from the history of two conglomerates of the motor industry and the refusal by Enzo Ferrari to sell to Ford, sort of birthed one of the greatest rivalries of all time. And we are lucky to have 3 exact replicas of the first, second and third car coming to Race Retro. So obviously we've got the Bruce McLaren and Chris Amon car, which the replica is done by Super Performance with a 427 CI big block. It's a tool room copy of the original and is actually listed on the Shelby register. So that'd be really cool. Obviously, it came first, but to many people, the next replica we got, which is obviously the Ken Miles, the infamous blue one, built by American company RCR, which actually they supplied many of the GT40s in the famous 2019 film Ford versus Ferrari. And the best news about this car is it is used regularly on track, which is just fantastic. That's what historic motorsport was all about. The fact you can see this exact replica of probably the most famous Le Mans car of all time out on the track in the UK. I mean, how incredible is that? And then we've got the car that came third, obviously Ronnie Buckman. It's done by GTD. It's a GTD, one of the only known Mark II cars in existence, which is really famous. And actually, you might remember it if you were at the 2003 Festival of Speed. It is famous for being on that amazing towering structure on the lawn that they did to celebrate obviously that 1966 win as well. So straight off the bat, we can't wait to have these 3 cars. If you're a Le Mans fan, Ford fan, Ferrari fan, if you want to come and see what took the glory, definitely head down. Thank you to GT40 Enthusiast Club. I mean, that's going to be really special.
Brilliant. I mean, that's great news, and I'm really, really pleased to hear about that. And presumably you'll be setting up a bit of a tableau of the cars and how they finished and things, which will be great. And I was talking to...
It's going to be a serious celebration.
I was talking to somebody the other day who'd never been to Race Retro, and they were saying about, you know, what makes it special. And I was talking then about the fact that the Stoneleigh Showground used to be the home of the huge agricultural show that happened every year, and that there is now so much outside space, exhibition space inside, parking. I mean, it's got everything that any sort of exhibition space could need. But in terms of the rally stage and those sorts of things, it couldn't be better, could it?
No, totally. I mean, the free parking is a big winner as well. Just being able to provide people just to come for the day, park, in one of the fields, and then have a good day out. But yeah, the rally stage is fantastic to just curate this amazing spread of sort of rally B cars and whatnot. Even the more modern classics to the sort of comp safari cars is really cool. Great space, great track for them to kind of just go out and enjoy themselves, start the season with a bit of practice, but you know, they get up to some serious speeds, some great sounds, and obviously the passenger rides on the track next to it is great. But you mentioned Stoneleigh, and that, you know, it's a great venue, but actually because of the growth of the show, the indoor space is fantastic, but we are filling up that race ready hall like never before. So just quickly, I mean, we spoke last time about the fact we are the only pre-season get-together now, and we think we're going to have the most drivers, team members, pairers we've ever had before. And off the back of that, you know, we've had 11 new brands. That's new to Race Retro, not new brands, but new to Race Retro sign up already. I mean, the Race Ready Hall we always sell it out, but it's looking like it might be sold out pre-Christmas at this rate. So yeah, 11 new brands, which is fantastic. Just to highlight a few, we've got HRX, obviously a massive racewear manufacturer from Italy. Radical, so a British manufacturer and constructor of race car, and obviously they do their famous race series as well. We've got another race series called the Focus Cup coming. We've got Autotel Motorsport Communications, who have worked with Le Mans for 16 plus years. Tomcat Motorsport, which, you know, is another competition car manufacturer. We've got a tyre company, Max Sports competition tyres, and Simtech, we do car parts. So we are covering so much of the motorsport industry. In fact, they're all new to Race Retro. Is really exciting stuff for the industry, for the show, and for the people coming who want to, you know, just prepare for their season ahead. You really can find it all here.
Well, I think you hit the nail very clearly on the head there, Gabes, that you've got... you start with free parking. That, let's say there are other venues where you'll pay something between £15 and £20 just to park your car before you ever get in, and I mean that's important. But it's getting that feel now of being the place to go. That a number of people have said to me, you know, yes, I'm going to Race Retro, I'll come and find you, because they just want to catch up with people, talk about what they're going to do next year. And on that front, of course, I just want to mention that we will be there as Historic Racing News on all 3 days, and we'll be doing our Corridors of Power game show on all 3 days, but also we'll be doing various live interviews as well. So if you're going, please come and say hi, because we'd like to do that. But I think it's really getting that feel, isn't it, for something which is beginning to catch on. And I mean, I take my hat off to you and all the Clarion team, because you've really stuck with it, and you had that dreadful time where the show was flooded out 2 years ago, and that to have come back so strongly. I mean, it's going to be a tremendous event.
It really is, and thank you very much, Paul. That's very kind. We want to grow the show and become as big as possible and really have a placeholder in the industry. So we're going to work incredibly hard to keep making the show as good as possible, have new features, and also there's a fantastic feature called the Pride of Paddock, which we've just opened applications, which allows our visitors a chance to bring their own competition cars, and it's visitor voted. And there's a first, second and third place, and it's just a great interactive competition. So look, if you have a competition car with a unique backstory or something you cherish very, very dear to you, please get on the Race Retro website and apply. We love to have your car at the show. There's 16 spots, they do get snapped up. And last year the third place was an Icon 917K, completely recreated after over 10 years, and then driven to Le Mans Classic. We had a Ford Angler come second, which was a 3-year restoration job done completely by the owner, Jim. And then first place, we had this unbelievable Hillman Imp, probably the most pristine Hillman Imp I've ever seen. And whether you like Hillman Imps or not, you can appreciate the fact it was bought for £1,000, completely transformed into this slightly modified but absolute beast of an engine car, and then it won a Hot Wheels competition as well, which was judged by Jay Leno and Snoop Dogg.
Well, that's pretty good, isn't it? And I think just saying that, you sum up Race Retro, that the first 3 cars, a Porsche 917K, a Ford Anglia and a Hillman Imp, that says everything about Race Retro. Tell us when it is again.
So it's the 20th to the 22nd of Feb, and it's at Stoney Park, Coventry. As we said, drive your car, come up and park for free. However, if you have a car you want to show off, we have VIP parking right outside the venue, and that in itself is growing into a little bit of a feature. As you arrive, you're looking to the car park, and there's the McLaren, there's Subarus, there's Lancias, there's the lot that people just come and trying to show off their car right outside the entrance. Who can blame them? So you can book VIP parking as well, and come on down. You have a little discount code of £2 off per ticket, and that is MDHN. And look, we'd love to have you guys down, and let's celebrate historic motorsport as best we can.
Gabes, it's going to be an absolute blast, and I know that we'll keep people up to date. We're getting a lot of feedback from people saying that they're enjoying our chat, and I hope that we can do this again next month in January. And of course, by then it's all a bit close.
We'll have almost too much news by February. We'll have to really whittle it down just to the most exciting stuff, which is hard enough. But it's going to be a lot of news coming out in these upcoming episodes, so do stay tuned. There's going to be some fantastic stuff.
Gabes Ewbank, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to talk to us today, and obviously we'll keep everybody up to date on our Facebook page, the Historic Racing News Facebook page, so that any news that you feed to us we'll be putting out there as well. So for now, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you, Paul. It's been a pleasure, as always.
Hope you're enjoying the Historic Racing News Podcast. Remember to check out our Facebook page.
I need to ask your opinion, gentlemen. I had a book delivered recently from Porter Press, which is called The Bamford Ferrari Specials by James Taylor. It raised a few questions for me, and I'd love to know what you think. The clue's in the title. It's about 3 particular cars which reside in the Bamford collection, which is one of the largest array of Ferraris anywhere in the world, I think. Lord Bamford, or Anthony Bamford, is the heir to the JCB earth-moving empire. He took it over 50 years ago now, and has grown it into a huge business. His father started it, and he's grown the business hugely. And the other thing is, he's a very, very wealthy man, and his collection of Ferraris is amazing. I mean, rumour has it that he has two 250 GTOs, but nobody is ever quite sure because it's not open to the public. The book covers 3 particular cars which he had his team create for him. And they are what one might call the Ferraris that never were.
I was going to say, what do you mean? Qu'est-ce que c'est create for him?
Yes. Well, that's the point, that there are 3 cars in the book, 2 coupes and a drop head. I don't think you can call a Ferrari a drop head, can you?
No.
No, it's a Spider.
Has too much of a Dearborn connotation.
Yeah. I remember saying to a friend of mine years ago, have you still got your BMW drop head? And he said, yes, I have, and don't call me drop head.
Oh, dear.
But the 3 cars in the book, there's 2 coupes and a Spider. One of the coupes is a bit like a cross between a 250 short wheelbase and a GTO. Very pretty in a sort of purposeful sort of way. Bit like a Porsche 935. It's a bit too short to be beautiful, but it's very nice. The drop top has a passing nod towards the California Spider. And if I'm honest, I think it's probably a little prettier than a California Spider. And the third is very much a show car, a hardtop rather than a fastback. And yeah, it's going to look happy on a concours lawn. That's what it's for. What I want your opinion is that the first 2 cars on that list were created from 1980s Ferrari 400 series cars, which were, and I use this word advisedly, sacrificed to create the new vehicles. The Concours Queen type thing was already a coach build special, but it's been chopped around to create the car we see today. The big question is it ever right to chop up a Ferrari to make another car? Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
You want to go first, PJ, or you want me to go first?
I almost wasn't going to get him.
I have a very short answer.
Go for it. You go for it first, Jim.
Hell no.
I'm with Jim. I was almost actually at the point of saying, my mother, who instilled all my manners into me, used to. Yeah, I know it didn't work. Don't worry about it. Used to say, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. And I was almost going to follow that, because what is actually going on here? To use a phrase that probably didn't exist back in the 80s when this was going on, this is Ferrari cosplay, isn't it? I'm going to dress up as a Ferrari.
Well said, sir.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a real Ferrari. It's it's just putting on the costume and off you trot. No.
Well, also it depends on if the perpetrator of said crime
we can see where this is going now. Yeah.
Is doing it for their own benefit or enjoyment, I should say, not benefit. Then yeah, I mean, who am I to say? But what's the ultimate end game? I can remember when in America you could buy the kit car where you went out and bought the Volkswagen and tore all the parts off and put the plastic body on it, and you had a cool looking space junk. And that's kind of what comes to mind, only you're taking a Ferrari and gosh, I mean, I don't mean to be insulting, but I'm American, so I'll just go ahead. I mean, it almost sounds like more money than brains in a lot of points. It's like, God, I don't understand why. If I understood why, I could maybe wrap my head around it more, but
I think the thing that came to mind for me was that if you cast your mind back a few decades now, that people were taking Ferrari 250 GTEs, the sort of 2+2, almost 4-seater cars, tearing those apart and creating GTOs out of them. That the famous saying of, out of the 36 Ferrari 250 GTOs built, all 108 still exist. Exactly. But
all 75 of them are here at this event.
but that those GTEs were torn apart regularly, and I saw one in one of the comics a few weeks ago for sale, a GTE, in its original condition, concours condition, for something like £250,000. Whereas 20 years ago, you could have bought it for 10.
Yeah.
And with 80s kitsch now coming into fashion and people looking back on it through rose-tinted spectacles, are people going to turn around to these cars and say, and they chopped up a Ferrari 400 for that? It's...
Well, and also I wonder what the factory thinks. I mean, they donated a one-off SP3 in Monterey for the Ferrari Foundation and sold it for $26 million. And like you say, these cars that you could have got for £10,000 years ago are now for £250,000. That's going to affect the overall Ferrari market, and probably not in a positive way. I wouldn't think, as the kind of the auction maven of the group.
Well, thank you, chaps, for that, because I was unsure whether I was barking up the wrong tree, but you've made me feel a bit better now. So thank you for that. Now it's nearly Christmas. What books are you going to be settling down with over Christmas, Jim? Let's start with you.
Well, mine are both certainly number one on the list is going to be the Pete Lyons book. Probably number two on the list is the volumes 5 and 6 of Americans at Le Mans. And then the third one, just to keep the stars and stripes, A.J. Foyt. I mean, we're talking about Pete Lyons, who was one of my early writing mentors, Americans at Le Mans, which is one of my most enjoyable things, and A.J. Foyt, who has always been my favorite race car driver. So, on the old Christmas list, it's great. And I'll tell you something else. The three of us are in a blessed position because of our work in the media in these past however many years. A lot of times we get promotional copies of books. And I'll tell you what, I bought my own Pete Lyons and I bought my own Yanks at Le Mans.
Hey.
That tells you how much I like those books and how good they are. So it's like the old saying, yeah, I'd buy a ticket to that. Well, I can't recommend those books enough. And the A.J. Foyt book just came out, and it happens to be on my Christmas list. So we'll see how Betty does with that one.
PJ, what have you got?
I haven't actually got a Christmas list, purely because I'm so far behind on reading what I've got that it's just going to sink me further and further into a hole. But I thought I may not have a Christmas list, but probably a lot of our listeners do, and they're going to want something to put on it. So I came at this from a slightly different angle, because I think maybe you don't actually necessarily have to buy new. There's an awful lot you can get out there secondhand, and there are some things that should be on any respectable bookshelf. And I was thinking the first one, obviously, that springs to mind, all the way from 1991 this book came out. I can still remember reading about it coming out in Autosport, and that's good old Chris Nixon's Mon Ami Mate, an absolute classic about Mike Hawthorne and Peter Collins. And to be honest though, actually you could probably go for almost any Chris Nixon book, because he is that good. I love Chris Nixon. I love his book on racing the Silver Arrows. I've referred to that so many times during these podcasts, and I did have a look, and all of these are available at very, very reasonable prices on eBay. Other platforms are also available. Similarly, if you want something to read, quite topical, Gerald Donaldson, another author that you can't really go wrong with. He's got that James Hunt biography, that very, very high quality. I loved it. It was one of my favourite books for many, many years, his Gilles Villeneuve biography that he did, which I think was the first of his motor racing biographies, if I remember correctly. And he's also done one about Juan Manuel Fangio, and that is a story I think everyone should know. I know I refer to them as the greats, and I keep saying, if you can't tell me a great driver from each decade, let's not even have this discussion about the greatest of all time. Yeah. But with Fangio, he was in his mid-30s when he first raced in Europe, and he was 40 when he won his first of 5 World Championships. Lost huge chunks of his career because of World War II, obviously. How much could he have done if we hadn't had World War II? So, yeah, fantastic to read about Fangio, just about the man. And also, you read the book and sometimes you read these books and no one's got a bad word to say about the person and it's all fluffy. This is quite genuine, because genuinely no one ever had a bad word to say about him. He was just so highly respected. But yeah, that's the way I would be going. I'd be popping those on your list, pointing your family, your good lady or whoever at eBay, and yeah, something to sit down on Christmas afternoon and have a nice read.
Now, as always, we can rely on Paul to come at it from a different angle, and thank you for that. But Jim, you've got something else?
Well, Paul reminded me his talk about honesty. I would also highly recommend Ray Evernham's book, because I remember when we had our chat with Ray, and then when we subsequently talked about the book, Ray talks about his life openly, honestly, warts and all, and I really have I had a lot of respect for him as a competitor. I have a lot of respect for him as a man now. So takes a lot of grit to admit when you're wrong and admit to your mistakes. And he in the book he puts it all out there. It was a great read.
And that doesn't happen every day, does it?
No, it certainly doesn't. Not in our business. For me, I loved the Neil Smith book, On the Prowl, about the TWR Jaguars. I mean, I thought that was superb. Derek Warwick's book is it's the other end of the and then we went to Monza, which is that one of I managed to get in 0.24 seconds under the fastest lap. It's not one of those. He talks disarmingly about his life in every sense.
Another honest one.
Yes.
Yeah. That's Derek to a T, though, isn't it?
Yes. So they would be up there for me. But whatever you do, then go and enjoy it. Go and find it. And I think we've all come at this from a slightly different angle, which is, I think, probably fairly healthy.
Don't forget, there are 3 ways you can enjoy our historic racing news content. Join our Facebook community and stay up to date on all the historic motorsports news, as well as some fun and, frankly, not so serious content. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, HRN Chronicles. Not only can you find back episodes of our historic racing news podcast, you can find bits from our archives, auction reports, and follow our Racing Icon series. Episode 1 tells the story of the car that proved IMSA's GTP concept was a winner, the Lola T600. And watch out for Episode 2, coming in late January, that tells the behind-the-scenes story of how the Porsche 962 came to be and changed the prototype racing world forever. And as always, the Historic Racing News Podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts, including on our YouTube channel, HRN Chronicles. Now be sure to tune in after the holidays as we kick off 2026 with our January edition of Historic Racing News, where we'll feature more updates in the run-up to Race Retro in February, a full recap of the year that was in the 2025 auction and vintage race car markets, and a lot more fun and interesting topics. That's going to be available wherever you get your podcasts on January 7th. Here's hoping you have a happy holiday season and a prosperous new year from all of us at Historic Racing News.
We're going to have lots and lots of stuff for you in 2026, but let's just look at the people that we've talked to this year. I mean, I'd like to thank for our December show, Gabes Ewbank from Race Retro, Bruce Jones, John Brooks, Pete Lyons and Neil Smith, who all came on the show this time round. But I've put together a short list of the people who've been on the Historic Racing News podcast in the last 12 months. Deep breath. Nigel Mansell, Mario Andretti, Kenny McLean from the Jim Clark Museum, Alex Jakes, Jody Ellis, John Nicholas, Neil Smith, Romain Dumas, Alex Brundle, Duncan Wiltshire, the chairman of the RAC Club, Derek Bell, Derek Warwick, Robin Donovan, Mark Raffoff, Guy Loveridge, Josh Parsons from Goodwood, Don Wales, Brian Redmond, Joe Hale from the Indianapolis Museum. And that isn't a complete list. So thank you, chaps, for that. I would like to express my end of year thanks to my friends and colleagues. First of all, the person that I must now refer to as the award-winning Paul Jurd.
Yeah.
And the man who does such a brilliant job of stitching this show together as well as appearing on it, and that's Jim Roller. Thank you both very much indeed.
You're too good, Jim. You make it look easy.
Yes. My name is still Paul Tarsey, and mostly I would like to wish our listeners the very best of this season. We'll be back the first week in January, but until then, happy Christmas, and as always, if you have been, thank you very much for listening.